Hello, welcome to the Sound of Science, the place where we deconstruct unscientific bogus and silly scams. Let's go get them.
I am the world's highest IQ record holder, YoungHoon Kim.
Ah, there he is again, the highest fake IQ man, the man who claims to have a 276 IQ, which is both biologically and statistically impossible. But for some reason he keeps on saying all kinds of stupid things that would rather correlate with a much lower IQ. Okay, what do you got today?
Why Richard Dawkins is wrong about God. Here is why he is wrong.
Aha, the highest fake IQ man in the world is going to take on the famous evolutionary biologist Richard Dawkins. It's funny that you would try to refute him, because you know what the difference is between you and Dawkins. Dawkins has a real PhD. He didn't purchase it, he earned it by doing scientific research and writing a thesis about it. Now, if you want to refute Dawkins, then I suppose you understand how to properly do that. You should first show a clip of Dawkins, or a quote from one of his works, demonstrating that Dawkins really said the actual thing that you want to refute, because if you skip that, then your entire plea becomes pointless. I guess you, thinking that you're the smartest man in the world, would understand that.
Richard Dawkins, a very famous scientist, says that God probably is not real because science cannot prove he exists.
See how that works? You only claim that Dawkins said that. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. Your audience has no clue without you providing the evidence. This shows that you, in a best-case scenario, are a clumsy communicator, which doesn't match with being the smartest man in the world. But for the sake of the argument, let's assume that Dawkins indeed said this. Then I would agree with the God probably not existing part, because there is just people claiming that gods exist. All over the world, people believe in the existence of thousands of gods, and none of them has ever been proven to exist. They've got that in common with vampires, fairies, and Harry Potter. No evidence means no reason to believe in them. So that is what I do. And science not being able to prove the existence of gods is not the issue. Nobody can prove their existence. It's not a science problem, it's a God problem. Those darn gods have just never showed up. So as it seems, there's nothing to prove in the first place. Okay, now that we've got that out of the way, please continue.
But just because science cannot find something doesn't mean it is not real. That idea is actually a mistake, and here's why. Science is a great tool. It helps us learn about things we can see, touch, or measure. But science cannot explain everything. Some of the most important things in life is real, even though we cannot see them with our eyes or test them in a lab.
Excuse me, will? Like in determination, desire, persistence, ambition? That kind of will? Of course we can scientifically observe, test and measure that. We then first define what will is. We then decide what its properties are. We then operationalize its variables. And then we're ready for measuring and testing it in all kinds of target groups. So yes, sure we can observe, test and measure will. What are you even talking about? And science also has a pretty good understanding of the social and even the biological causes that influence will and determination. We can identify specific parts of the brains, neurotransmitters and hormones that are associated with will and determination. How can the smartest man in the world not have checked all of that before saying such a silly thing in a public video? So it looks like you wanted to demonstrate that some things do exist but cannot be scientifically proven, but you chose a rather clumsy example for that, because the concept of will or determination is pretty well observable, explainable and testable through biology and the social sciences. Try that with your God. He cannot be proven socially and biologically.
Think about numbers. Can you touch the number 2? Can you smell the number 10? No. Numbers are invisible, but they are real.
Wait, what? You want to make the case that we cannot prove the existence of numbers? If we cannot prove the existence of numbers, then how would you know that your IQ is 276? But let me elaborate on this a bit more. No, we cannot touch or smell numbers. But you have chosen the wrong variables. We can observe, recognize, manipulate, measure, test, and predict numbers, thus proving that they exist. First, we can observe the existence of numbers. Look, this is the number 4. It doesn't require any faith or belief to observe and recognize this number. And it doesn't matter if you're a Christian, a Muslim, a Hindu, a Buddhist, or an atheist. We basically all attribute the same value to this number. So numbers are pretty much universally observable and recognizable. We can also edit or manipulate the manifestation of numbers, still leading to a universally recognizable value. Look, I totally transferred its mode of appearance. But this still is the number 4. Even in a totally altered form, we can still recognize it and observe its existence. But best of all, we can also test and measure numbers using calculations. Look, this calculation only works with the number 4. Changing the 4 into any other number will give an incorrect outcome, so we can test if a particular number is the right number in the calculation. This means that we also can predict numbers. See, I can predict the exact number that will follow from this multiplication. The possibility to observe, recognize, manipulate, measure, test, and predict numbers are all very strong indicators that numbers exist. Again, try that with your God. It seems that you, again, chose a rather silly example to demonstrate that some things that do exist cannot be proven scientifically.
Now, think about your thoughts. You are thinking right now, maybe about this video. But can anyone open your brain and see the exact thoughts inside your head? No.
No, but I can open ChatGPT and see that ChatGPT uses almost the exact same words as you do, which is a rather remarkable coincidence. Now, if you perhaps used ChatGPT to create your text, then you also must have read that neurological science actually can prove the existence of thoughts and thought processes, because they are represented by flows of neurons in the brains. We can measure thought activity and we can roughly detect what category of thoughts people have. So yet again, you chose another clumsy example to demonstrate that some things do exist but cannot be scientifically proven.
What about time? You cannot hold time in your hands. You cannot pour it into a glass. But everyone knows it is real.
No, we cannot hold time in our hands or pour it into a glass of water, but this is yet another stupid example that brings you nowhere. Of course, science can prove that time exists. We can measure it. We can use time to build accurate scientific models that have proven to be reliable over and over again. And we can even manipulate time through time dilation. Time will pass slower with high gravity and high speed. GPS satellites even need to correct their clocks because of time dilation. So the existence of time is one of the things that science has proven with the utmost detail and clarity.
Just like that, God is real. You cannot touch him or look at him through a microscope. But that doesn't mean he is not there.
Oh boy, what a disappointment. You promised us a big thing, proving Richard Dawkins is wrong, who supposedly said that God is probably not real, because science cannot prove that he exists. And you've been trying to make the case that many things can be real, despite the fact that science cannot prove that they exist. But up to now, all your examples fail. Will, numbers, thoughts, and time are all phenomena that are very thoroughly proven by science to exist. They can be observed, recognized, manipulated, measured, tested, and predicted. But let's imagine you were a bit smarter, and that you indeed had found examples of things that are real, but cannot scientifically be proven to exist. How would that prove anything about your God? It wouldn't. It would prove nothing about your God. And I can hardly imagine that you would even try to draw that conclusion, because the smartest man in the world would know that that would be a logical fallacy, being the false analogy. Let me give you an example to clarify that. A Labrador and a poodle both have 4 legs, and they both are dogs. A cow also has 4 legs, but that doesn't mean a cow is also a dog. You see, so again, thoughts and numbers are not scientifically proven, at least that is what you were aiming for. And they are real. God is also not scientifically proven, but that doesn't prove that he is real. It doesn't prove anything about him. Sweet mother of Gandalf, dude, I have to warn you. If you're building your career and your future on the delusion that you're the smartest man in the world, there's only one thing that you should not do, and that is saying the stupid things that you say in your videos, because that basically destroys the entire idea of you having the highest IQ in the world. Up to now, I've watched about 5 videos of yours, and you've said nothing in those videos that would qualify you to even have an average IQ. All I see you do is repeating silly Christian apologist fallacies that have been debunked a million times. Dude, I don't believe your silly IQ claim. I challenge you to demonstrate that you actually are smart. At least try to produce a video in which you don't say all these silly things. I'll be waiting until that time. I just think that your highest IQ in the world is simply nonsense. Thanks for watching.